Brother from the Ancient Mother, it's another Headspace review where we basically bring to the foreground every active, creative practitioner of rap right now doing interesting things and just being themselves and trying out new things, trying out old things. This is the domain where I, yours truly, kind of attempt to bring it to a place where the artist's intention is assessed according to whether or not they hit their target. Talking about hitting targets, we live in a world that kind of forces us to think in ways that are corporate oriented. We live in a world that kind of forces us to pull the inner entrepreneur in all ourselves, because we're in a marketplace that is shifting and changing with the times, and if you have a job, it always feels like you might lose it. If you've lost a job, it always feels like you need to pay your own job. If you do have your own entrepreneurial business, it always feels like you don't really know how long the industry you're in is going to last. So there's a kind of keeping our ear to the ground and our finger on the pulse, as it were, as to this constant shifting of the guard and where capitalism is going right now, especially for us black folk, because what it is we're already kind of in the lower rungs of how culture perceives value, and the irony of that is that our very own expression in our history is used to be the buying aesthetic, the force that really drives ultimately an agenda that's still orientated with serving a few select, mainly white people. Why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because hip-hop entrepreneurs in South Africa have been rare. Rare because for the longest time hip-hop wasn't seen to be viable, and when it finally had its peak in the golden era of the 05-06 moment, there were people who kind of saw beyond just being in front of the mic. There were people who saw the possibilities of building an industry where hip-hop at large could grow and become something phenomenally viable for people to pursue, and to create a tradition of a hip-hop economy in South Africa. And when we talk about people like this, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Rashid Kay. Basically, to sum it up, your favorite hip-hop shows were brought to you by this guy. He's always been the kind of creative playmaker behind a whole lot of what we see happening in the hip-hop space on our television screens, whether we're talking about back in the days with Shizness or other kind of youth-oriented shows which attempt to kind of just teach rap music to the youth, hip-hop to the youth, albeit in a format that's kind of packaged to be popular. Rashid is somebody who understands the game deeper than most, but his love for the game still goes back to his love for rapping. And the painful irony about Rashid is that he's incredibly phenomenal as a hip-hop entrepreneur, but he's incredibly weak as a rapper. Like, I'm just gonna say it, he's not good at it. And I think that's the great thing, because him not being good at it allowed for him to focus on other things. If Rashid was dope, we probably wouldn't have most of what we have right now. So I think it's a great thing that Rashid is whack, because now we have the ability to appreciate hip-hop in other aspects. And I'm using whack very liberatingly here. I'm fucking with you, Rashid, because I don't believe in terms like whack. But what I mean is, when you step on the mic, there's a certain kind of charisma, technical focus, work at the channeling and inattentions of the voice. It's a skill of voice projection. When we really describe it on a technical level, rapping is understanding how the different tones of your voice can register with the emotions you're trying to convey, and then you add on top of that a skill that takes poetry and blends it with a level of accessibility. Rashid has none of that, and what happens is that you love him because he loves rap so much that the heart is there. You know, when you say that it's the thought that counts, it really is. But ultimately, the execution matters in how the product is able to be effective. And I think Rashid would himself say he's not a good rapper, but he likes making rap albums anyway because he can afford to, and because he just enjoys it. And isn't that a beautiful position to be in, where you don't necessarily have to be good at something to do it? Sometimes rapping is a form of therapy for people. sometimes rapping is a form of exercising those demons and just having fun. And the one thing that I think we can appreciate about this project called Ra, the Sun God, is that it's a dude who uses hip-hop to heal himself first. So fuck you if he really can't do it, but he's doing it for himself. And that's something I was able to tap into and find truly admirable about this, because I mean, if you don't enjoy what you do, it's gonna come across. And man, is Rashid enjoying himself in each and every one of these songs. It's kind of like seeing a child, a little baby, you know, trying to walk, and they're getting the hang of it and then they fall. You know that there's potential for them to really grow and into this, but you're more interested in the attempt. And it's the attempt of Rashid rapping which is more interesting than the execution for me. And I think with every artist, the attempt is an interesting thing to pay attention to. What are you motivated by? How are you trying to do this? And Rashid tries to do this by bringing together his famous and well-connected and talented rap friends to just have a party, a lyrical boom bap party, a party that says, yo guys, can't really rap well, so in order for me to create a musical piece that's gonna be listenable, I have to bring people who actually can, and I have to be able to find myself in between the moments of actual talented rappers to kind of still execute this and curate this in a way that makes for a good project. And that's the kind of marvel in this. I think ultimately Rashid could have chosen to just have all these dope MCs in one album and still call it his album, kind of a la DJ Khaled. But what he chooses to do is put himself in it, which kind of hurts it because there's moments of like real cringe worthiness. But ultimately it's so bad it's good, because after hearing some of the most atrociously awkward lyrics, then you hear a Land Rose. After hearing some of the most adorable attempts at being dope, then you hear somebody like a Golden Shovel. So it's this interesting, shocking juxtaposition of ooh and ah. So what happens is you go from bad to worse to great, and those polarities are so interesting to listen to. And I think the one thing that we can appreciate from this is there's very few people who can take some of the maddest spitters in the game, the ones that I mentioned and others, and bring them into one album where they just rap for rap's sake. So as a musical project, oh god, this is awful, but as a creative effort, as a testament to the culture, it's important. Everything everyone does is important, especially when it comes from love, especially when it comes from the heart. So when I review a project, the artist's intention is important. Rashid's intention in this was to just create a beautiful moment of rap. To just, for those of us who love the actual lyrical art form, for those of us who don't appreciate hip-hop in its guise of being danceable, for those of us who just want a jiggy time, for those of us who are nostalgic to the moments where we remember people like Zola saying, and even if I've got my own CD, I'm the same OG. Rashid literally lifts that sample and turns it into a song. And I think that's the sentiment here. Rashid is a fan of the culture. He's a practitioner of the culture at pretty much the highest level. And this is just a moment for him to revel in his own love of the culture. And I mean, you gotta appreciate that. You gotta appreciate the fact that there's people who love rap in its kind of traditional format so much that they're willing to go to the extent of showing us the greatest talent. So it almost feels like being in one of those like talent shows and witnessing the best of what South Africa has to offer, some of the best, and it just all anchoring on this weird little token of grand prize. So thematically it doesn't make a lot of sense, because I mean it opens up with like a Elijah Muhammad for some reason.
Yes.
And then, you know, it goes into different elements of what, you know, rap is about, the grunge, you know, that cypher mentality, that hand in the crotch, I'm the best, and it goes into those same corners. I mean, it's really the kind of rap for a very typical listener. When you listen to this, you close your eyes and you can see the snapback and the Timberlands. It's really in that world. It's in the world of appreciating hip-hop in its classical format. So as a project, I must, with the greatest of love, give this a solid, and I mean solid because that's as solid as it can be for me, a solid 3.5 out of 10. Because what it does is, it's a moment for us to realize that when we don't know how to really do something, you know, and we work at it and we develop it, the best we can also do is kind of bring about people who are talented to kind of cohesively help us make this work. And where it doesn't become super effective is, again, Rashid anchors this on himself. And I think that had he kind of like taken the back seat and allowed the rappers who are skilled at it to work their flows and insert himself in moments where it's appropriate, because having the first verse or having the longest verse or just having a verse at all is something that allows for the spotlight to be shined directly on you. And I think Rashid doesn't do much with the spotlight other than just show us that he's still pretty amateurish at rapping. But again, what this project can be appreciated for is love and effort. So hats off to love and effort. Hats off to everybody who loves rap, even though it isn't really their skill set. Sometimes easy knows his PUA. And like I said, if Rashid was good at rapping, we probably wouldn't have a whole lot of the things we have today. So thank goodness he's not that good, because it allows for him to just appreciate it as a entrepreneur. And I think these moments are hilarious reminders of understanding our lane, understanding how to do something and how to do it well. Because if Rashid Kay does flip on us one day and become an incredible rapper, it's gonna be from learning how to tap into his own register, his own tone, which he doesn't really know how to do. It's very monotonous. A lot of these raps feel like they were read. You know, you don't feel the connection, you don't feel the personality popping off. It's really dry, straight and narrow rapping. And I think by juxtaposing himself with rapping that is colorful, full of life and personality, charisma, and real insight to the skill, he could possibly fuck around and be good one day. But right now, it's a solid effort. I appreciate the effort, but we're gonna call a spade, and we're gonna say this is an example of how not to rap and how to do the best by not being a good rapper, by kind of saving your ass with good features. So shout out to good features, shout out to everybody who loves the culture. My name is VJ, the brother from the ancient mother. Appreciate you, Rashid Kay. Appreciate you, Ra. Oh, another element that I really like about this, Rashid's lack of personal dialogue really is made up for in the fact that the interludes and the skits he chooses, really, there's a lot of like personal conversations people are having with him here. Like, they sound like WhatsApp voice notes where they're actually kind of giving him his credence and wishing him well. And it's always like, it feels really good and warm and fuzzy to listen to a project where you get to feel just the love people have for each other and the person and the artist. So the 3 mark in what this project is about for me really is about the heart in it. It's sensitive. It says to us this is a man who's surrounded by love because he gives love, and ultimately because he gives love, it's this the reason why he succeeds. I mean, can't you do anything if there's no love involved? No.